Well, welcome to another edition of Music View on WNYU FM. I'm Tim Sommer, and tonight we're here with 2/5 of the Undertones. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Well, this 20% of the Undertones is Fergal Sharkey.
And I'm Michael Bradley.
All
Good
right.
to be with you.
Now, you guys are in America, but you don't have a new album out right now or anything, or even a brand new single.
No, the basic reason we're here, we're getting into the studio on August 24th in England to start recording new album singles and things. We just wanted to go somewhere to play the songs live, and some very bright person suggested New York, so here we are.
It's been
We just turned up.
It's been 2 years since you've been here.
Yeah. Well,
The last LP, we didn't come over to support it because it wasn't getting any radio plays. No point in us coming over just to moan about the fact that it's not getting any radio play. We can complain back in Ireland. So
we basically
came
just
over.
came to an agreement with Capital, insofar as that if it was worth our while coming to the States, then we would come and do it properly, rather than coming over for 3 or 4 weeks and play a couple of clubs, sort of token gesture, which is just a waste of our time, of money, and a waste of their time. So say for us, Positive Touch was a vast improvement on the previous stuff in America, insofar as that it actually did get played on some radio stations and things. So it was a worthy experiment in that way. We'll probably do a similar thing with the new LP. I would say hopefully it should be due for sort of a late December, January release here in the States. And if things start to take off with it, or if there is an interest, then we will come over and possibly stay 3 or 4 months and just do the whole thing and do it properly.
But how many dates are you doing right now?
3.
Yeah.
2. Well, we've done one last night. We're doing Peppermint Lounge tonight, and then go to Boston tomorrow.
And then back to England?
Yeah, one in London then on the 16th, and then into the studio.
It's a world tour. You know?
Oh yeah. It's actually because it was just somebody mentioned it last night, and we've always up until this year toured fairly extensively, whether it's been in Europe or America or wherever. Probably because we're getting into the studio now, we'll spend the next 2 months or whatever doing the LP, which will take us sort of right up to October, November. And probably in this year, Undertones dates will total maybe a dozen if we're lucky, which for us is pretty ridiculous. And hopefully we'll improve on it next year and get out and do a bit of work.
Yeah. So far you're pretty happy with Capital and EMI.
Yeah, well, I would much prefer people to be honest and saying, your record isn't selling, don't bother coming, rather than saying, oh yeah, surely come over, and we'd come over and sit here for 8 weeks and nothing happened. What's the point in that? I'd much prefer people to be honest and direct with me, because they're, at the end of the day, they're not really fooling anybody, because if we did come over, it would soon become readily apparent that it was a waste of our bloody time coming.
Because you had a degree of trouble leaving Sire, didn't you?
There was no real degree of trouble. It was all fairly simple and straightforward at the end up.
Took a bit of time, just.
It just took a bit of time. They were simply at the end of the day they were in breach of contract. So legally they had absolutely no question about it. But it just took time to sort things out.
How would they breach their contract?
So
they
never sent us the accounts on a certain date, and they did that before, and about the start of 1980, and so we said we were going to leave, and they said no, don't leave, we'll give you more money if you stay. So we said, okay, we'll stay, and they give us more money, and then 6 months later they did the same mistake again. So this time we says, we're finally going to go. Simple as that. They weren't very good company anyway, so there's no point in staying. We got all the money we could ever get out of them.
When did you come up with the idea for RDEC?
Well, that was immediately after we got out of the Sire deal. We were left with 3 or 4 options. One being to sign directly to a new company, or sign to a smaller company and go through a licensee deal, a similar type of operation to Sire. And that tends to work, especially in Europe, where records like Stiff Records, who are again licensed BEMI, and they seem to do fairly well for themselves. And then there was the option, of course, of setting up our own label, and that had certain advantages, which we thought were fairly positive to our needs at the time. So we opted for setting up our own label and then licensing it to a major company. And all we did, we recorded Positive Touch and then somebody took it round, and getting out of the Sire deal, we had left with the rights to all our back catalogue and our publishing rights, and we just went round and hopped it round the record companies, and it was the highest bidder. It was simple.
Yeah.
Cold-hearted businessmen we are. Certainly.
Let's hear a song from the Undertones now. The first thing we're going to hear is It's Gonna Happen, which is a single that came out a little bit before the Positive Touch
Yeah.
album, right?
Yeah.
No.
Number 18.
Yeah, for me, Positive Touch was a little bit of a disappointment, and so far as I personally think it's one of the best records we have ever made, and actually, just on a comparison with other things that were in the charts at the time, I thought it was a hell of a lot better, and I was slightly disappointed it didn't do a hell of a lot better than it did, but I still think it's a great record.
I think I should have worn mascara for it, tell you the truth.
That's what's wrong, we didn't have mascara and dyed hair.
It's Gonna Happen seems, people commented a lot that it seems to have a very morbid lyrical line against a very sort of happy musical line.
Yeah, it is probably true. The initial, I've been through various stages of being directly relating to the troubles in Northern Ireland, and it evolved through various stages, and at the end of the day, I don't think any of the band really know what the hell it's about. It just sounds good. Like there was Dee at the end up who had the original idea for the song. Tried at the end of the day simply just to sort of comment on the whole nuclear thing, where it's inevitable, it's going to happen, it's just human nature that people will want more power and more of things which they don't have, and no matter how much they do have, they'll want that little bit extra, and it just takes that little bit extra of a shove, and then apocalypse.
Alright then, It's Gonna Happen from the Undertones on WNYU Music View. It's Gonna Happen, that's from the Undertones, off their Positive Touch LP. We're here with 2/5 of the Undertones tonight on Music View.
Yeah.
Now you just mentioned something before about Northern Ireland.
Did I?
Yeah,
You sure?
absolutely positive.
Oh, I see.
Got it on
Okay.
tape.
Now, do you still see yourselves, what is your relationship with Northern Ireland? And what is your relationship, as other than it just being a place to live? Do you feel that the troubles there have had any effect on your lyrics, or?
Indirectly, yes. We are like naturally aware of what's going on in Northern Ireland, simply because of the fact we live there and live among it. So I think it's inevitable that eventually must have a reflection in some way if you're trying to be creative. In our case, it's writing songs and making records. It eventually will leak through in varying degrees. We try not to be too blatant about it, because I think it would be fairly childish on our part. So if it does, and if we're purposely trying to say anything about Northern Ireland, we try to make it a little bit subtle. Maybe on occasions a little bit too subtle, where people haven't realised the connection. But as I say, at the end of the day, we're just out to make good records.
Yeah. I've always wondered, is the lyrics to Jimmy Jimmy slight, just like you
No.
said, very slightly?
No.
No, not really at all.
That, for some reason, we actually found it fairly funny at the time. It hadn't even crossed our minds to try and work it into the lyrics of Jimmy Jimmy. And when the single was released, for some reason all the newspapers in England and stuff started writing on about the contents of the song being about a bomb explosion in Northern Ireland and this guy being rushed to hospital and stuff, and it was complete utter drivel, right? And as I say, we found it
Just
fairly funny at the
It wasn't
time.
really written about anything. It was just a weird kind of.
It sounded good at the time.
Rare song.
Yeah. Is that you on the cover of the sleeve?
Yeah.
How old were you when that showed?
Looks like E.T.
That was about 1852 or something. The photo was taken.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
don't know. I think it was about 11 or so, 10 or 11.
Yeah.
We all do foolish things when we're children.
And you're holding up a trophy?
Yeah.
What's that from?
I knew it was going to play that. That's why I shut up.
That's for
I
singing.
actually was awarded that trophy for its outstanding musical qualities of my voice. You see, so there you are. You've had your answer.
His mother used to run this competition, you see. It
Yeah.
was a
Nah,
music
no,
competition,
you
and his
start.
mother was a judge.
Don't
So,
you
like,
start.
obviously
Don't
he
you
won it
start.
every year, you know. It was rigged. No, there's been allegations, but completely untrue.
The band that I saw last night at the Peppermint Lounge, you know, the Undertones, I thought you were almost completely different than the Undertones I'd seen 2 years ago and 3 years ago. There's very little resemblance to the band I'd seen then. At least, I mean, you looked the same, you moved the same way, but the sound was completely different.
But it's
But we have changed. We have made a conscious effort to try and do something different. We don't want to remain exactly the same way we were 3 years ago. And I say we have changed.
I don't know if it's I don't know if that's the technical problem, but I think that was. You mean it's not like, doesn't sound like the Ramones anymore? Is that
Maybe.
That's some people said that. Thank God.
Yeah, that's
The Ramones are okay,
You know,
like 3 or 4 years ago.
yeah,
But
you know, who would we be fooling by staying like that? Absolutely nobody but ourselves. What's the point? We've got to try and expand and push ourselves to, slightly further on all the time and try and do new things. You can't remain stagnated in one spot forever.
you'd probably notice the difference because it was 2 years ago. You know,
Right.
but it's gradual to us. We don't. Well, do you think it's better or worse? Don't
Well-
say if it's worse. Forget the question if it's worse. No, well, we're fairly pleased with it ourselves.
How long have you been using the keyboards on stage?
A year. Well, since last spring. He's got better. Only the reason why there was so many mistakes last night was that he hasn't played. We haven't rehearsed for 3 weeks, you know. So forgive us.
Next question.
Next.
Lead on.
It seemed like there was a time, when what I meant sort of was it seemed like there was a time when you would have been very, comfortable covering a boys' song or something like that, like you used to.
Yeah.
When now the sound seemed to have been very sort of influenced by Orange Juice and things like that. Those recent developments in British pop.
That's true. Yeah, that's mostly John. He wrote a lot of songs after seeing Orange Juice, and it's still, and even some of the recent songs still sound like that. But it's like passage of time, As he said, it's no point in staying the same.
Do you still feel comfortable doing the old material?
Yeah. I think like there are occasions, obviously, when you've been on tour for 3 months or whatever. You get sick to death of doing them. But at the end of the day, you've got to take into consideration the fact that people only come to see you for one concert, and it's their night out, and you've got to give it a bit of leeway and do them do them still as best that you can, or the best you feel you can at that particular moment, rather than saying, sod it and just sort of run through it, just to get it over and done with and out of the road. Like last night, with the older songs, because we've been spending the last 6 months sort of writing the new material and working on arrangements and stuff, and it was basically the first time we'd played them in 6 months, and I found it quite refreshing and really enjoyed doing some of the older stuff. I thought it was really good.
It was a good laugh. Although, as he said, if you do it too many times, it shouldn't get bad.
But you can feel that something like Teenage Kicks is consistent with what you're doing now, on stage at least.
Well, there's been arguments about that.
Yeah, there has, because it takes a bit of organisation to try and arrange the actual set itself, to keep it sort of a steady flow and continuity through it. And doing something like My Perfect Cousin, just for me it doesn't fit in anywhere at all with something that's going to happen, or Joey Ocean or something, right? Or Beautiful Friend.
But Teenage Kicks seems to fit in better. It's a good song,
I think Teenage Kicks is just one of those songs anyway, which we could do it in 10 years' time and still probably fit on the set somewhere.
Unfortunately, well, we probably will, but I hope not.
Well, you two don't usually have that much of a hand in writing material, right?
He does.
Oh, I'm
You've
sorry.
insulted him now. You have insulted him.
I thought it was mostly John and Dee.
Well, John and Dee does, but I do a few words. I write the words. My Perfect Cousin. Right, I'll continue on anyway.
Oh, anyway, you seem to be a band that you like to pick up on influences. How can I say that in a way?
We
that
copy
makes sense?
people.
We rip everybody off.
No, not. You know what I mean.
I would phrase it to the extent that we try to remain aware of what other people are doing, and what other
That's
people
good.
are
That's a good way
listening
to phrase it.
I think it's a fairly fine way to phrase it.
We can't be labelled then,
I think basically when it boils down to it, at the end of the day, that you are involved in music, and listening to music, it's bound to have an effect on you. And for us, there are certain periods through musical history which we feel a certain affection for. We've grown out of it possibly of late, but with all our earlier stuff, there was a parallel to maybe sort of late 60s material and things. And I say it was just a particular fun period for us. And we've probably moved on to something else, but most of the time, if it's a totally subconscious thing, and it's just the way it turns out, the finished product.
We used to copy the Ramones, then we used to copy the Beach Boys, then we used to copy Orange Juice.
Whoever's doing well, that's who we
don't know who
whoever's number one.
We haven't decided who we'll copy next, you know.
Seeing you do Puss in Boots.
We used to copy New York Dolls a lot as well, that's right, forgot to say that.
And now you're walking. Free burst.
Definitely, they were a big influence, New York Dolls at the start.
But
all the guitars and all.
Is the only cover you've actually ever recorded Let's Talk About Girls, or
Under the Boardwalk?
Under the Boardwalk,
yeah.
right.
We don't know why we did it Under the Boardwalk. It was a good idea at the time. No,
listening to it now, it doesn't seem
it's not very good, no. But Let's Talk About Girls, that was, well, it's about 4 years ago, you know, during 1977, 78. The main influence was the Nuggets LP, you know, all them 60s groups.
Well, I said that
and the New York Dolls.
I said that to somebody last night when I heard all the organ.
That's it. We're getting back to it, you know.
We're getting back to the Nuggets. Yeah.
That's great. We're doing I was some psychedelic songs, you know.
Well, I just thought, like, at the end of the day, it was like one of the main reasons why we done it was that was a great song. I like the whole thing about Nuggets. For me, it was just great songs that nobody had ever heard tell of. Right, there was all these great bands who made great records, and they quickly and quietly disappeared. And we just thought people deserved the right to hear it. So that's to say one of the reasons why we recorded. Right, it was just to say, you know, it was a good song. It's worth listening to now as much as it was worth listening to 10 years ago.
They were never popular in England, those groups, at all.
Well, they weren't exactly
They
popular
weren't
here.
popular, yeah.
Some of them were hits. Some of the records were hits.
Well, one-offs, yeah.
Aye.
You know, that sort of
But
thing.
they weren't even one-offs in England.
Yeah. Now, do you all still live in Northern Ireland?
Yeah.
In Derry, or?
Yeah.
Yep.
You know,
Nothing much more you can say about Derry, you know.
Our little country mansions.
are you at all in touch with the bands there?
Well, the local bands in Derry that are any halfway decent.
Yeah, but
yes.
we don't try and do it because, like, most of the people who are involved, like, in music, it's a fairly small thing anyway. And most of those people we knew when the Undertones were, like, playing the pubs in Derry, and like, they were just friends of ours anyway. Like, we don't get involved because sort of we're the Undertones, you know, and we're going to help you out, lads, and make you big stars and things. You know, it's still just friends of ours. And if we, you know, have a piece of equipment, or if they, you know, something that they feel that they need, and we can give them,
we hire it to them
Exactly.
at exorbitant rates.
Because I mentioned before about two bands that came out, you know, around
Rudy
the same
and
time you did, Rudy and the
Outcasts,
Outcasts.
Mm.
And strangely enough, they really haven't changed their sound very much.
No. Belfast in general seems to be trapped in 1976, and that's full stop. I don't think there's anybody in... Well, there's been a couple of bands in Belfast who've been trying to do something different. Not very successfully. Basically because they don't do it very well.
Is there any bands we should look out for from...
None.
Not that we know of at all from Ireland. Sorry State of Affairs. I think I really were okay, you know, for a few singles, I think, but it's taken them 4 years to do about 5 singles, and you know, I don't think they're going to do anything. You know, as you said, they haven't changed their sound. My God, it's like not changing your underpants.
When you listen to, like, their first album, how do you feel about it?
So, well, I hardly ever listen to it, and sometimes when I do listen to it, I think it was quite good, you know.
Yeah. I think it's really good.
It's not as if we know it inside out, you know.
Because it wasn't really like an attempt at making a record. We could have probably now, on reflection, we could have a live LP just as easily, you know, because we just walked in and did it, lined up the equipment, and away we went. And there was, like, you know, overdubs and all this sort of thing, but like there wasn't really all that sort of thought, because we just didn't have really all that great deal of knowledge on how studios worked and what things you could do with them. But I think it's a great record.
I think it came out great sounding anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Well, the songs were good as well.
when you mentioned something about, you know, looking back at the Nuggets LP, it has great, you know, primitive music or whatever, you know, just music that you can be influenced by. Do you think it seems strange that people can look back at, like, the first Undertones album and see that as, like, great raw punk that people can be
I know what you
also
mean.
influenced by?
It was funny enough because we saw in, you know, Altered Images. This, the songwriter with them said that it was influenced by us, you know. And
Yeah, it was
makes you feel really old, you know.
It doesn't.
Jesus, 4 years
like
ago.
an interview they did, and they were saying that one of the first songs they ever tried to do was
Teenage Kicks.
And it sort of, like, it took a drummer like 3 weeks or something to figure out the bass pedal on it. And you sort of like it's very flattering when people say that sort of thing about your songs. And like, we've just had There Goes Norman, apparently it's been covered by a German band. And that sort of thing is very flattering. Although the version I doubts about is we haven't heard it yet, and we shall see. But it is naturally very flattering when someone thinks that what you're doing is that valuable to them, where they'll go and do that sort of thing.
Does make you feel old though, you know, because God, it doesn't seem that long ago we recorded the LP, and now it's
No, it wasn't really. 3 years, 3.5 years.
3 years. 3 years is a long time in show business.
Why did you decide to re-record True Confessions?
Well, they did.
Can't remember.
They did. I remember. I'm the elephant. The idea basically was we felt that it could be done a lot better. And so far as when we recorded the Teenage Kicks EP, we had 8 hours of studio time in which to record 4 songs and mix them. So again, that was sort of charging, set up the gear, do it and charge back out again. And we just felt that we could do a lot more with True Confessions.
No, I remember now. I remember it's coming back. We wanted to do a disco version of it. That's what it was.
That's sort of the way it came out.
A disco version. This is great. A disco version of everything.
What actually happened was, although it was a great idea at the time,
Knock on Wood was out at the time.
when we were actually in the studio recording it, Blondie released Heart of Glass. You see?
Great.
So that sort of screwed that idea up.
And that got the number 1, so we thought,
Yeah.
right, this is our new number 1, the disco version of True Confessions.
Yeah. Let's hear one more song from the Undertones. We're going to hear When Saturday Comes, which is again from Positive Touch.
Yeah. Saturday Comes, a lot of people, come back to what you were talking about earlier on, sort of influences and stuff. Sort of resembled the Rolling Stones, Painted Black.
That's what we used to call it, the Rolling Stones one as well.
We used to call it Painted Black. No, but it was that again was just at that period of time. We were listening to like a lot of early Rolling Stones stuff between the buttons and things like that. And again, it was a subconscious thing. It wasn't really until we had recorded it and sat down and listened to it. And the guitar into at the start sounds exactly the same, although it's like different chords and a completely different rhythm. But it just sounds the same. And I say that's just one of those things that was totally subconscious, and we didn't intentionally do it, but it just turned out that way. But I still think it's a great song.
All right.
Good words.
All right then, the Undertones on WNYU FM Music View with When Saturday Comes. When Saturday Comes, that's from the Undertones. We've spent the last half hour with 40%, is that it?
40%. Oh, that works out.
Yes, 40%.
That's 40%. That's
The
4
Undertones
over
Empire.
10, which is 2 over 5, which is
40%
This is 40%, yeah.
of the Undertones Empire Global
Me and him.
Inc.
Inc. Limited.
Rockin' Humdingers Inc.
Rockin' Humdingers Inc. Once again, this is a question I'm sure you've been asked a lot. How did you arrive on that title?
Rockin' Humdingers.
Yeah.
That was all.
This is very crude, this, you know.
It was all obscene ones.
Rockin' Humdingers.
Dingleberries. No, that's really toilet level humour.
It is a colloquialism of anyway, it's local slang from Derry.
A humdinger is something. You know what a humdinger
The
is?
actual-
Something that's really good. You know, wow, that was a humdinger. Not rockin' humdingers. Well, that was
The
good.
actual definition of itself probably wouldn't be fit for FCC regulations. They'd probably put you off the air if I explained it in its entirety. But it just sounded good at the end of the day.
We're going to call the LP that, but then it sounded too jokey.
We just took it into the context of being taking that humdinger, and that's really great. People would say that's a humdinger, so we just call them rockin' humdingers.
Alright, I guess that about wraps it up here for Music View on WNYU FM. Fergal, Michael, right?
Michael, Mickey. Well, Michael to me, Muller.
Well, you introduce yourself as Michael.
Michael.
But I've never heard
That's
of
that's Mickey's my stage name. You know, it's my nom de plume.
Tis been our privilege, sir.
Undertones, it's been wonderful.
Good night, and
Right.
thank you, and may
Bye.
God go with you.